This is Ed Robinson talking about Excel VBA, in particular ActiveX Controls. These are the things that we can put on spreadsheets, for example, command buttons, text boxes, and so on. We'll take a look at the command button, which we've already had a look at, but let's just have a look at a few other features. We've seen how we can put a command button on a worksheet and then double click on it, and that brings up that particular event. But before we double click on it, let's just take a look at the properties and methods. We have the properties and methods just here for the moment, but if you don't have them, you can just right click and choose properties like that. Let's talk about the name property, which is different from the caption. You must understand that this is the name of the object. So we'll call this, for example, and what I'll do, I'll put a caption the same as that, which I normally do, and I'll just double click on that. I've copied it and I'll just paste it in there just to make sure my spelling is correct. Now, of course, when we double click, we get the command test event. So it's a lot easier to organize your code like that. If you have more than one button, it's a good idea to give them a name like that. So we might like to take a look at, we've got here our set of design time. If we click on, make sure you clicked on the object if you're looking at the properties. Sometimes you don't realize you're on the sheet and you're looking at the properties of the sheet. So make sure you click on the object. Now these are what we call design time properties in here. We can have properties changed at runtime as well. So we've seen how we change the caption property at design time. I'm going to change it at runtime. So I'll just control drag this down here and then put a full stop, and then we can see the caption will come up. If I like to accept that, I could press the tab key, or indeed I could double click on it, and then I can say the caption is equal to, for example, which will be applied at runtime. And then another property, if we look down the design time, you can see there's an enabled, for example, and we want to disable it for some reason, so we'll put that equal to false, and that should disable it as well as change the caption. So I'll take the design off and click the button, and you can see it does just both of those things. So if I click it now, nothing happens, and we'll need to change that back at design time if we want to proceed any further. So I'll go into here. I think I'll just get rid of that code, and then I'll take a look at the properties, and you'll notice that the actual caption has been changed in here as well. So I'll just put it back to what it was, and you'll notice the enabled is false. Now if I double click on that, if you watch what happens, that will change to true. And so once again our command button is enabled. What other controls do we have here? For example, we've got a text box control, which is this one here. This A here is a label control. They're much the same. So I'll just click there and put in here. Now will I change the name? I might as well. So I'll go to the properties of that, and then I'll double click and type TXT text for a text box. Not very adventurous, but there you go. So now if I take a look at the I can go to my command button. Now I'll copy this. I always make a habit of copying stuff like this, so, and then paste that in there, and then I know my spelling is going to be correct, and then I'm looking for the text property there, and I can put that equal to something or other, any bit of text that I can think of. Then I'll just clean that up, and then if I now take the design off and click that, you see that it's presented in the text box. I might want to show you that this is a two-way thing, so I can actually message box out the value of the text which is in, so I'm reading the value which is in the text as well. So I'll just comment this out and then just do that, and you can see it message box out the value. So it's a two-way thing, is the text box. But if we were to have a label, then it's slightly different. That it will do the things we've done so far, but you can't actually type into it. Let me just take the design off and show you actually that you can type in there and then message box, and you see it message box what's there. But the difference is a label. You can't actually type stuff in at runtime. So let me just clear the deck here a bit and go to my design time and delete those. I'm going to look now at a spin button control. Be careful you don't go to the forms controls. They're not only old-fashioned, but they're a bit restricted in functionality. It's the ActiveX Controls. So we'll look at the spin button, and I'll double click on that to see what comes up. It's a change event. Well, there is another event here which is the spin up, spin down, and spin up. So I'll just try each of those. And what I'll do when I do that, I'm going to alter a value in the cell 2.2 by, for example, spin up. I'm going to increase the value, and then in the spin down I'm going to decrease the value, and then just see what happens in this case. If I just click that button, it goes up and then and down correspondingly. The spin button control has a value property. You can just see the value property down here. At the moment it's reading 200. We can take a look at that property by going to the spin change event and then having code like, for example, I'll just comment this out so that it won't interfere, and then we can say that's equal to the spin button 1 value. So I'll just control drag that down to there, full stop value, and then we can show the value up there. Also we can change the maximum and minimum value that it can have, and for example I could do that in my command button if I change those properties there, but just to show you that that's the same as if I look at the design time, you can see the max and min here, and then you can also see the small change here, which I've now just changed to 5. You can change that to whatever you like. Now if I run it, you'll find that it's got a maximum of 200. It goes down by 5s, and the minimum it can have is 100. I'll now take a look at some other controls. I'll just clear the deck here, and I might as well just clear the code away, delete all that. Okay, we can try some option buttons. We used to be able to double click, well we can double click on it to give you another button, but we used to be able to hold it down and you just click away and put another button without going back to the menu. But I'm just doing it by longhand, putting 3 option buttons in, and while I'm here I'll put in 2 check boxes as well, and let's see what the behavior difference is between those two. So if I take the design off, I think you know that you can actually have these independently checked, but if you can only have one option button, that one switches the other one off. Let me take a look at some of the events. I could go to them instead of double clicking on my controller. I could go from here, and I'm interested really in the change event. So I'll just delete the click event, which is the default event which came up. And then what I'll do is put the value in B8, which is this cell down here, I'll put the value of option button 3. Now because they're not independent, if I now click on option button 1, you'll see option button 3 is false, but if I indeed click on this, it'll put it equal to true. So indeed they are independent. Sorry, they are dependent on one another. So if one goes, as you can see, you change this one, then this one changes as well. What if we wanted 2 sets of option buttons? And we want them to act, I'll just clear this away, and we want to put some more option buttons on here, and we want these to act independently of the others. What we need to do is go to a property called the group name. So if I click on this set of option buttons, you'll see that all of them have got the name of sheet 1 for some reason or other. So I'll just change that to something else, and this one as well to the same thing. And the others, of course, have got their group name as sheet 1. Now, if I be careful when you're changing that property that you will click away to make sure it has been changed. And now if you take the design off, you'll see that these act independently of these. Just to show you that you can read that property as well, I'll double click on that. That's arbitrarily pick that button so that we can message box its group name. that might just seem a bit roundabout for the moment, but if I were to click option button 1, then it tells me what the group name is. It's all a bit tedious sometimes, because we used to have in Visual Basic 6 what we call a control array, and you could loop through all of these, but it's quite tedious to see which button has been pressed, and you have to really bring down the event for each event, and deal with them separately, so it can, and try and identify which group name it is and then which button. It can be a bit tedious.